Hey everybody, it's Dan, and I want to apologize. At the end of the last video, I said that this video would be about Friday the 13th Part 7, A New Blood, and I was incorrect. Looking at the information that I had, it turns out that unfortunately, the next film that we'll be covering is Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, which is the sixth installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street series with Freddy Krueger, and is yet another just awful, pointless entry in this series that just went on and on and on for no good reason other than to make a quick buck for Dimension. And yes, like I said, this is the sixth one in the series, and it's really not any better than any of the previous ones, and it really doesn't use anything very new or different than the previous five entries. So it starts off, and of course we are once again in primarily throughout the film dealing with kids who are going to a sleep institute for sleep studies. Big shocker there, much like the third one. But the very first part of the film, you'll notice while watching that Freddy's just back. There is no explanation whatsoever for how he came back from the previous film. None. At least in all of the previous films, they threw some scene in that showed how he was returning. I'll give them that. They weren't necessarily good, but I will give them that. They showed him returning. This one, no explanation. Just he goes from the end of the fifth one being dead and his soul being taken away by Amanda Kruger's spirit to, oh look, he's just back. Not only is he back, but he has murdered every single child in Springwood at this point. It's taking place about 10 years after the end of the previous one. And it's awful. Absolutely awful. There are few redeeming qualities about this film. Number one, Yaphet Kotto plays one of the psychologists. And some of you may remember him from the original first Roger Moore James Bond film, Live and Let Die. He played the main villain. And also from Alien, the original Alien, which is an outstanding horror film and sci-fi film. Well, in this film, Freddy has murdered every single child in Springwood with the exception of one. And he sends that other one out to look for his child, Freddy's child. Because go figure, now in this one they've just kind of decided to throw in a little bit more backstory that Freddy never had, that was never necessary in any of the other films, which this film is entirely unnecessary. But yeah, so Freddy had a family. He had a wife who, disappeared after finding his, because apparently his whole thing, it wasn't just one glove. He killed people, he killed kids with just a ton of different gloves, apparently. Like, that was his thing. He made killer gloves, which is just a stupid idea. The one with the four claws, fairly cool. There's a bunch of other ones that are shown in a scene in the film, just absolutely pointless and stupid. But his wife made the mistake years ago of seeing this. She mysteriously vanishes, and he has a child. Now, one of the other psychologists in this sleep institute keeps having dreams where she sees this young girl. And she can't quite place it. Meanwhile, this other guy, the one surviving child, John Doe, real original, he's 100% convinced that they need to take, one of the vans from the Sleep Institute and go out to Springwood and find more information on Freddy and find out, who his child is. and he ends up convinced that it's him. They, of course, end up with three other people coming in along the way, one of which is, just a pointless stoner character that's really unnecessary. Although his death does bring back Johnny Depp in his second appearance in any of these films. He was in the first one. That was actually the first film that he was ever in. He shows up on the television set during a dream sequence in this one talking about, this is your brain on drugs. And Freddy hits him with a frying pan and, offs him again. Sort of funny. But anyway, the psychologist finds out that she is actually, long story short, Freddy Krueger's, not illegitimate, his daughter that just, they somehow, she completely forgot all of this and it was wiped from her mind. Who knows? Probably some hypnosis or something. It also has to do with some sort of actual dream demons from some kind of ancient mythology that Yaphet Kotto talks about, who gave him this power and then eventually take it away. And the daughter ends up actually, falling asleep, and just like in the first film, just a total rehash of it, grabs him and brings him into the real world. Except apparently this time, when she, takes his glove and stabs him with it, that actually kills him. So apparently he can only be killed by his glove. Of course he'll be back, but that's neither here nor there. At this point he is killed. He goes to hell, where all dead murderers belong. This film is peppered by a little bit of coolness, but it's very few and far between. For example, obviously the fact that Yaphet Kotto is in it and plays a fairly major role is pretty cool. There's also a very brief appearance of Tom and Roseanne Arnold, Roseanne Barr, after their divorce, but they were married at the time, and they're just a couple of crazy, former parents who are living in Springwood who, miss their kids, and she is insane and, sees the new teenagers come in and tries to convince them to come with her and be her kids. There's also a brief appearance by Alice Cooper as Freddy's stepfather, or I don't know. I guess he was in an orphanage, so not stepfather, foster father, I guess, who's a drunken jerk, and Freddy ends up killing him in a flashback. And there is a song written and performed by Iggy Pop that goes along with the film. It's Freddy's dad. And the final, during the credits, I guess it's kind of neat because it's playing that song and showing, clips from previous installments in the film while the song is being played. I guess it's kind of a good way to, completely end a series that should have ended about 4 films ago. But yeah, that's all I got for this. Tomorrow's film is going to be Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, and we'll explain why that subtitle is utterly pointless. But we'll do that tomorrow. Have a good one.